Hello everyone, good morning. I'm Dina Akasha, and today, inshallah, we are going to discuss coordinate geometry. As for coordinate geometry, actually, what I was thinking is that instead of having one long video, I was thinking of dividing it into shorter videos so that you don't feel bored watching the video. So today's video is going to be about the rules that we can use in coordinate geometry. But first, we need to understand what is meant by coordinate geometry. Now, let's start by the word coordinate or coordinates. Taban, we all know that the coordinates are the x-axis and the y-axis. And of course, let me pick up the pen again. Now, of course, the x-axis is responsible for the horizontal motion. And the horizontal motion is definitely right and left. Guys, I'm really sorry about my handwriting. Wallahi, I'm trying to make it better, بس ما فيش فايدة. Okay, and right is always indicated by any positive unit or any positive value, and left is indicated by any negative value, of course, any negative unit. And then, of course, we have the y-axis, and the y-axis is responsible for the vertical motion, and the vertical motion is up and down. And again, up is represented by any positive quantity, down is represented by any negative quantity. So this is mainly the word coordinate or the coordinates. Now, what is meant by coordinate geometry as a whole? Coordinate geometry is anything related to lines or curves drawn on the coordinate plane. Now, the x-axis and the y-axis, they both are called the coordinate plane. Okay? تمام? Coordinate geometry is the part of math that deals with any line drawn in the coordinate plane or any curve drawn in the coordinate plane. Now, the curves were already discussed in harder graphs. Today, we are going to discuss lines. Today, we are going to discuss lines and everything related to a line. Okay? Now, what is the line made of? Now, the line is made of set of points. A lot of points so close to each other, and when we join them, we get a line. Now, this line over here is the starting point, and this line over here is the ending point. And of course, you can change into end or start, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, so basically, as we said, the line is made out of so many points, but we just need one point and another to join between them to get a line. So 2 points are enough to make a line. But that doesn't mean that the line has 2 points only, it has a lot of points. Now let's start with these 2 points over here, the points that are in bold. Now let's assume that the coordinates of the first point is 1 and 2. Okay, now I think you all know this, that any point on the coordinate plane is written as an ordered pair. Now this is called an ordered pair, and we can also call it the coordinates. Okay, now in the ordered pair, we always write the x value first, and then we write the y value. So the horizontal motion and then the vertical motion from the origin. So this point over here, let's name it point A. Point A has coordinates 1 and 2. For example, طبعا I'm just picking any random points. Now let's move on to this point over here, and let's name it as point B. And let's see what are the coordinates of point B. Now, this is totally not to scale. Not to scale. ماشي؟ يعني لو أنا جيت قررت أقيس المسافة ما بين هنا وهنا مش هتطلع 2 سنتي بالظبط. So this is totally not to scale. So let's assume that the coordinates are of point B are 4 and 7 مثلا. 4 and 7. So the coordinates are of point B are 4 and 7. And again, you always start with the x value and then you start with the y value. Okay? What are the questions that you might be asked when you are given 2 order pairs as follows? What are the questions that you might be asked when you are given 2 points or 2 order pairs, you might be asked 3 very important questions. The first question is finding the gradient of this line, and we are going to discuss the meaning of the word gradient. The second question is finding the midpoint of this line, finding the midpoint of this line. And the third question might be find the length or find the distance between point A and point B. So these are the 3 questions that you might be asked when you are given ordered pairs. أنا نسيت هم راحوا فين؟ ما كانوش هنا؟ I think كانوا هنا. راحوا فين؟ كانوا hearts كده كنت بستعملهم على طول. كنت عايزة أهم. Yay! Sorry. أهو. بحبهم قوي. They're very nice. Okay, these are the order pairs that we have. Okay, so let's start by the first question. I'm going to move on to another slide. Okay, I'm just going to draw the coordinate plane again here nicely كده. Okay, and then put my points as we said. Point A, as far as I remember, was 1 and 2. أهو هكتبها هنا كده. Point A, 1 and 2. And then point B was 4 and 7. Point B is 4 and 7. تمام? And there goes the line. So what is the first question that we might be asked when, as we said, we are given 2 points or 2 order pairs? When you are given 2 order pairs, as we said, you might be asked to find the gradient of the line. Now, what is meant by the word gradient and what is the symbol that represents the gradient? The symbol that represents the gradient or the letter that represents the gradient is the letter M. Now, first we need to understand what is the gradient. The gradient is a fraction. And this fraction represents the vertical motion over the horizontal motion. The vertical motion over the horizontal motion. Meaning what? Meaning that if I am at point A, if my starting point is point A and my ending point is point B, if I wish to move from point A to point B, how many steps will I walk vertically and horizontally? So from A to B, A initially, so we always start by the vertical motion, اللي هي y-axis. So on the y-axis, point A was at 2, B was at 7. So from 2 to 7, how many steps? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the horizontal motion. The horizontal motion meaning لو أنا واقفة عند A وعايزة أروح ل B, how many steps horizontally will I walk? 1, 2, 3. Now, why is it a positive gradient? Now, this gradient is a positive gradient because I am going from A to B. So from A to B, I go up and then I go to the right. So this is positive 5 over positive 3. Okay? طيب, let me explain this in a different way. بس انت يا مس من شوية قلتي انه ده ما عليهوش arrow. This is a line. ومين قال انه point A هي ال starting point و point B هي ال ending point؟ مين اللي قال يعني؟ ما حدش قال. انتوا صح. طيب يعني أنا can I do it the other way around? Can I consider point B as my starting point and point A as my ending point? Yes, of course, I can do that. طيب, فلو أنا هبتدي from B to A, starting by the vertical motion, فأنا عند 7, أهو, and then I will go down to 2, meaning I went down 5 steps. Went down 5 steps, so it's negative 5. And then the horizontal motion. The horizontal motion is أنا كنت عند 4 and then I went back to 1. I went back 3 steps. يبقى I went to the left. Left قلنا يعني negative 3. So from B to A, 5 down, 3 left, negative over negative, and this will change into as well 5 over 3. Same answer over here. So what do we conclude from this story? We conclude from this story is that any line that is from left to right, you always check from the left. Any line from left to right going up, this line will end up with a positive gradient. This line will end up with a positive gradient from left to right. دايما يا جماعة علشان أحدد اللاين ده طالع لفوق أو نازل لتحت أو أيا كان، دايما ببص من الشمال. طب يعني احنا مثلا نقعد نحل في الامتحان بالطريقة دي؟ لا، definitely not. This is not how we're going to solve in exams. نقعد نرسم ونعد والكلام ده كله وبتاع. Let's go to the notes and see the rule. Actually, before we go to the notes, let's introduce the rule of the gradient. The rule of the gradient is simply the y coordinates subtracted from one another, and then over the x coordinates subtracted from one another. طبعا this rule has to be memorized by heart, and this is the gradient rule. The change in y, or the change in the vertical motion, which what we call the rise, over the change in x, which is the change in the horizontal motion, which what we call the run, rise over run. And some books actually write it as delta y over delta x. This triangle over here is a symbol of change, يعني difference, حاجة minus حاجة. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now let's see, how do I apply this rule over here? If we go back to the notes, let's refer to the notes. And let's just look at this page over here. This is page number 141. مبدئيا كده. دي page 141. Okay. Now here, the gradient cases. Now we just discussed this part over here. Now, as you can see, these smiley faces indicate the starting point of the line. زي ما قلت لكم من شوية، علشان أقدر أحدد اللاين ده طالع لفوق أو نازل لتحت لازم دايما أبص من الشمال. So this blue line over here from left to right is going up, then the gradient is positive. When I do the math, the gradient is positive. Plus VE means positive. Positive. Okay, and we did it by proof. نفس الconcept بقى. Let's pick another color. If the line from left to right is going down, if the line from left to right is going down, then the gradient after calculations will be negative. The gradient will be negative. Now, as for horizontal lines, now a horizontal line doesn't matter بقى if you look from left to right or right to left, at the end it's still horizontal. For horizontal lines, the gradient is 0. طبعا في دايما كل حاجة ليها أسباب. اوكي، بس احنا في الفيديوز بتاعتنا ما بنقعدش نعمل الاسباب، بنشوف بس الرولز واستعمالاتها ازاي. And then the last case of course is the vertical line, and the gradient of a vertical line is identified, is unidentified. يعني when we calculate it, the calculator will give error. مش هيبقى فيه ملهاش حسبة، لأنه هو ال y over ال x. فطبعا هنا لما نيجي نحسبها هنلاقي إنه the change of x is 0. فطبعا change of x is 0، دي هتطلع لي error على الكالكوليتر، عشان كده بنقول عليها undefined. While for the horizontal gradient، تمام، ال horizontal gradient لو جينا بصينا هنلاقي إنه the change of y هو اللي 0. فعادي إن يبقى الزيرو فوق، لكن المشكلة إن هو يبقى الزيرو تحت. فخلينا ننزل تحت كده ونشوف هنا. Now what I want you to do, this is in your notes, page 142, if you are using my notes. I want you to actually divide this part, this page, into 3 parts بالشكل ده. 3 parts بالشكل ده. تمام؟ The first part, let me just erase this, and I want you actually to do the same هنا كده برضو. خلينا نحط ال3 rules قصاد علينا ان احنا هنشتغل عليهم. Put the 3 rules over here. Now this is the first rule اللي هو y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and as we said, this is the gradient rule. This is the gradient rule. Now find the gradient of لا هو طبعا the question here is divided into 3 parts بس احنا مركزين دلوقتي على gradient. Find the gradient of the line that passes through these 2 points. How do I use the rule? Now, as we said, 2 points are more than enough to calculate the gradient. Now, every point has x and y, has x and y. One of them will be called point 1. فsince هنسميها point 1 هيبقى x1 y1. والpoint الثانية هنسميها point 2 اللي هيبقى اسمها x2 and y2. And then what I simply do is that I substitute in the rule y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 over x2 minus x1. And then you do the math. 7 minus 3 is 4, 2 minus 1 is 1. طبعا this as well could be written as 4. بس أنا عايزة أركز على الجزئية دي علشان أنا بيفرق معايا قوي تبقوا فاهمين يعني إيه gradient of line 4 over 1. مبدئيا since the gradient is positive this means that the line is going up بالشكل ده. طب يعني إيه gradient 4 أو يعني إيه gradient 4 over 1؟ يعني لو أنا واقفة عند point وعايزة أروح للpoint التانية أو الpoint الأخرانية I will go 4 steps up and then 1 step to the right. So there goes your line. فهو ده اللاين بتاعي. So again, let me say this in English. I need you to understand what is meant by the gradient 4 over 1, okay? Or just 4. Now, since the gradient is positive, that means, as we said, that the line from left to right is going up. Now, if I decide to sketch this line, how will this line look like? If you pick any random point, okay? Now, gradient 4 over 1 means from this point to the end point, I will go 4 units up. Then, as we said, this is the vertical motion over the horizontal motion. And then 1 unit to the right. And where is the line? Here goes your line. But this is just for you to know. طيب, let's check this second example. And let me just give you another concept here. خلاص زي ما اتفقنا ان انا I will name this as x1 y1 and then x2 and y2. جه بقى محسن قال لي يا مس هو لازم البوينت الاولانيه دي تبقى هي point 1 والبوينت الثانيه دي تبقى هي point 2. No, you don't have to, not because this point is written the first then it has to be called point 1. No, you can simply call it as point 2. مش فارقه خالص. And the same thing here, not because this point is written second إنه هي it has to be the second point. لا, it could be point 1. So when I decide to label the x and the y, this point could be x2 and y2. This point could be x1 and y1. And then I substitute in my rule. Will I get the same answer? Yes, of course. يعني let me try and do it here for you. لو أنا قررت هنا العكس. If I decide to name this as x2, y2 and name this as x1, y1. Sorry, y1. Now, the rule says y2 minus y1. So 3 minus 7 over x2 minus x1. Now, if you do the math in the numerator, this changes into negative 4 over 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Again, you'll get the same answer. So definitely you'll get the same answer. But please بقى, don't do this mistake. With the panic of the exams, students tend to do this. دي x1 ودي x2. يا مس بصي بقى ودي y1 ودي y2. يا سلام. طبعا ده غلط رهيب. خلي بالكم من الحاجات الصغيرة دي لأنه حرام إن أنا مثلا أنقص درجات على حاجة زي كده. So as we said, it doesn't matter which point is point 1, which point is point 2. Now, if we do it this way over here, so y2 minus, now we're dealing with negatives. Now, please remember that أنا عندي y2 minus y1 وهنا عندي x2 minus x1. يا ريت ناخد بالنا من الساينز. يعني be aware that in these dotted points you can put negative numbers عادي. So x2 is negative, sorry يا لهوي, y2 is 5 minus x2 شخصيا is negative 4. It's okay to have two negative signs ورا بعضيهم كده. You want to put a bracket, you don't want to put the bracket, it's totally up to you. x2 minus x1. Now you do the math. So negative 5 minus, so 5, sorry, this is 5. 5 minus minus 4 is positive 9. Over negative 16 minus 2 is negative 18. So the simplest form is negative half. I always prefer keeping my gradient as fractions. يا ريت no decimals. Now let's see if I want to sketch this line. Now this line, since it is a negative, يبقى this line is going down. طب يا مس هنا بقى هنحط النيجاتيف فين؟ مع ال1 ولا مع ال2؟ مش هتفرق. اوكي؟ مش هتفرق. فلو انا عايزه احطها مع ال1 دي معناها ان انا I will go down 1 and then I will go 2 to the right. So here's the line. If I decide ان انا احط النيجاتيف مع ال2, so this is the starting point, I will go 1 up, تمام؟ and then 2 left. اهو نفس اللاين بالظبط. فمش هتفرق لانه the negative belongs to the fraction as a whole. Okay, maybe I go through a lot of details بس انا بجد بيبقى فارق معايا ان الولاد تبقى فاهمه. طيب what if يا مس انا خلينا برضو عشان ناكد على المعلومه قبل ما نقلب على الرول الثاني. What if I decided to name this as x1 y1 and this as x2 y2? Will I get the same answer? Definitely I will get the same answer. So y2 minus y1 over x2 اللي هي 2 minus negative 16 بالشكل ده. So negative 9 over 18 and of course you will get the same answer. You will get the same answer. So we discussed the gradient and we discussed the possibility of switching the points mean x1 ومين y1 ومين مش عارفة ايه, and then we understood how to sketch it if you wish to sketch. Now going back to the whiteboard so that we discuss the second rule of the day. خليني امسح بقى الكلام ده لان انا I want to use the same ولا لا نعمل في صفحة جديدة مش فارقة. Okay, now the second rule that we are راح فين خط اهو. The second rule that we are going to discuss today, when you are given 2 points, ادي point A هنا 1 و 2 وعندي point B which was 4 and 7. Okay, اهي تمام. طيب the second rule that we are going to discuss today is the midpoint rule. What if أنا I decided to walk from point A to point B وجيت في النص exactly تعبت قلت لا أنا محتاجة أريح. Okay, the midpoint rule is simply a rule that will help me find the coordinates of the value of the point that is exactly in the center of my line. The point that is exactly in the center of my line. Let me just give you a معلش لي تليفون فمش عارفة الصوت ايه. As we said, the midpoint is the point that is exactly in the center of the line. And if I would just want to remind you من زمان قوي كان يجي مثلا يقول لك ايه 8 to 10 find the number in between. طبعا هنا the number in between is super easy which is 9. But the question is, how did we get this 9 by calculation? By calculations, to find the value of 9, we added the numbers and we divided them by 2. We added the numbers and we divided them by 2. So basically, if you wish to find the mid-x, you add the x's and you divide by 2. فمثلا 1 و 4 أنا عايزة الرقم اللي في النص. So 1 plus 4 over 2. 1 plus 4 is 5. 5 over 2 is 2.5. If you want to keep it as 5 over 2, it's totally up to you. So the x value of the point that is exactly in the center is 2.5. Now, how do I find the mid-y? الy اللي في النص. What is the value of the y that is exactly in the middle between 2 and 7? To find the mid-y, you add the y's and you divide by 2. طبعا هي الرول بتتكتب كده x1 plus x2 على 2 و y1 plus y2 على 2. أنا مش بكتبها كده، أنا بكتبها you add هوريكم إزاي بكتبها. You add the x's divide by 2, you add the y's divide by 2. And since we are required to find the midpoint, so this is an order pair. So let's do the same thing with the y. So 7 plus 2 over 2. 7 plus 2 is 9. 9 over 2 is كام؟ 4.5. 9 over 2 is 4.5. فالpoint اللي في النص دي is 4.5. الpoint اللي في النص is 4.5. Very, very easy. هيقلي يعني ما فيهاش أي مشكلة. Now let's go to the whiteboard. So what is the rule of the midpoint? أنا بكتبها كده. You add the x's, divide by 2. You add the y's and you divide by 2. And remember that this is an order pair. And please remember as well that what applies on positive applies on negative as well, applies on fractions, applies on letters. Okay? يعني مثلا, for example, if you are given this question, okay? مثلا 3 وهنا عندي مثلا 2e وهنا عندي 5 وهنا عندي مثلا for example 6e. And the question says, find the midpoint. So you don't need to panic. We already know the rule. The rule of the midpoint is, أنا جايبة نفس خلي دي negative 3. Let me change this into negative 3. خليها negative 3. So you add the x's, divide by 2. Negative 3 plus 5 over 2. Negative 3 plus 5 over 2. You can actually put it on the calculator زي ما هي. طبعا دي هنا 2 على 2, which is a 1. Okay? And then, طب يا مس ايه ده؟ A2ED و 6ED. No need to panic at all. What applies on numbers, what applies on positive, applies on negative, applies on fractions, applies on letters. مفيش أي اختلاف خالص. So 2E plus 6E is 8E. 8E divided by 2 is 4E. طب يا مس ايه الإي دي؟ هنسيبها كده؟ هنسيبها كده. خلاص هنعمل ايه؟ We will not do anything. So please do not panic. Please do not panic. So let's move on to the notes. And هنا in the notes, in this page over here. Now let's write the second rule, which is the midpoint rule. Now, as we said, نكتبها هنا في الحتة دي. The midpoint rule is you add the x's, divide by 2. You add the y's, and you divide by 2. Please, my advice, because as we said, coordinate geometry, I guess it will be 3 videos. Okay? افتكروا كلامي. خلي دايما gradient fraction in the simplest form. يعني ما فيش داعي نحوله decimal، يعني لأنه في كده نوع معين من المسائل رخم شوية هندخل فيه في الفيديو الثاني أو الثالث. بنحتاج gradient يبقى fraction. Now, as for the midpoint, you want to keep as fraction, you want to keep as decimal, مش فارقة. But when you're dealing with fractions, it's always preferable to write your fraction in a simplest form. And if you decide to change to decimal, please make sure that the decimal is terminating. مش decimal طويل ما بيخلصش. So let's solve question number A and let's solve question number B. Now, all you need to do, I'm just going to write the order pairs here كده على نظافة. 1 and 3, 2 and 7. To find the midpoint, I'm just going to use highlighter. You add the highlighted yellow, you add the axis, divide by 2. And then I'm going to use the pink highlighter. You add the y's and you divide by 2. Very, very easy. Okay? So your answer is an order pair. Add the yellow, 1 plus 2 over 2. Add the pink, 3 plus 7 over 2. And find the simplest form. 1 plus 2 على 2 is 3 على 2 or 1.5. Okay, هنا I wouldn't mind changing it to decimal because as you can see, it's a terminating decimal. لطيف. And 3 plus 7, 10. 10 على 2, which is 5. Now moving on to question B, same. Now the difference between question A and question B is just the negative numbers. إن أنا هنا قال يعني إيه بصعب لكم الموقف وحاطة negative numbers. بس إحنا we don't panic. Okay? You add the y's, divide by 2. أنا بس حبيت أستعمل نفس الألوان. And then you add the x's, divide by 2. So to find the midpoint, you add the x's, divide by 2. Please remember, that your answer is an order pair. Remember that your answer is an order pair. For the gradient, your answer is a number. Okay? So here, you add the x's, divide by 2, negative 16 plus 2 over 2. And this is the final answer, negative 16 plus 2, negative 14 over 2, which is negative 7. And then you add the y's, divide by 2. يا مس إيه ده في negative عادي. مفيش أي مشكلة. So 5 plus negative 4 is 1. 1 over 2 is 1 over 2. You want to change to half, it is totally up to you. So as you can see, this is quite easy. يعني it's not that bad. خلينا بس نشوف idea ممكن تيجي. طبعا يا جماعة أنا I'm using random numbers. ف يعني لو طلعت أرقامها سخيفة ما تزعلوش. Now this is one of the ideas, as we said, إنه the question, as you can see, is an algebraic question. تمام. And here let's see بقى what is the difference in this question. So this is another idea. So I am given مثلا يجي يقول لي مثلا ايه, a line has a starting point. Again, I'm using random numbers. A starting point مثلا point A, which is مثلا 3 and 5, and has a midpoint, ومديني midpoint, which is مثلا 8 و 12. اي حاجه, انا بحط اي ارقام يا جماعه من دماغي. And then the question says مثلا find the end point. So it's the other way around. Find the end point. Okay, so what do you think over here? Now we can do it by sketching, بس أنا مش بحبها صراحة. So let's use the rule. So the rule says x1 plus x2 over 2 will give me the mid x. صح؟ ما هو the mid x بنجيبها ازاي؟ اللي هي الx اللي في النص. x1 plus x2 is over 2 is the mid x. So I have x1 مثلا, for example, and I have the mid x. So all you need to do is just substitute in the rule and solve as an equation. So 3 is the x1. x2 هي اللي أنا ما أعرفهاش. Over 2 gives the 8. And then you just solve it as an equation. Okay? Of course, I will send the 2 by multiplication. So 3 plus x is equal to 16. And then move the 3 by subtraction. So the x, أو x2 is 13. Wow. x2 is 13. So مثلا the end point, I think I should buy a new board اللي أنا بكتب عليها دي. يعني أنا أحيانا بأن أنا عندي القلم ممكن أكتب على الكمبيوتر. Let me see. عشان هنا بس ابتدى يسخف. Hold on. Okay. So technical problem. Sorry about that. Okay. So as we said here, point B will have an x coordinate of 13. We'll have an x coordinate of 13. Okay. And you can actually try it. أهو. يعني لو قلنا دي كده x2 أهو. 3 plus 13 over 2, 16 over 2, which is 8. What applies on the x coordinate applies on the y. So I have y1, I have the mid y, and I need y2. So applying the rule, y1 plus y2 over 2 will give the mid y. Okay? طيب, فأنا هنا هعملها بس هنا. So y1 is 5 plus y2 is the missing value over 2 gives 12. Solve as an equation. 5 plus y, move the 2 by multiplication is 24. So y is equal to 24 minus 5, which is 19. And do the math. 19, 12 دي. 19. Okay, so 19 plus 5, 24. 24 divided by 2 is 12. So Anna, what I would do if I was given a starting point and a midpoint, I would do it by the rule. I guess يعني دي كده هتبقى ألطف لي يعني. The last rule that we're going to discuss in this video over here is the length rule. The length rule or the distance rule. the distance between 2 points. Let's use the same line that we were dealing with. Okay, point A, which was again, طبعا this applies to any points يعني مش لازم 1 و 2. Point A, sorry. Point A اللي هي 1 and 2. Point B, which was 4 and 7. Here goes the line. Now, what is the question? The question would be, find the length of line AB. Or the question would be, find the distance between points A and point B. Now, I need to remind you of something, or of a theorem that we discussed before, which is, and I guess you're all aware of the Pythagoras theorem. Okay. Now, أنا هنا في الديستنس رول ما بحبش أدي الرول على طول بصراحة، بحب إن أنا أقول لكم الرول دي بالذات جت منين. Now, if I actually decide to do the following, if I decide to draw a horizontal line over here, drawn in orange, and if I ask you to find the number of units between these 2 points. Now, I started at 1, I ended at 4, so as you can see, from 1 to 4, the number of units walked is 3 units. يعني من 1 ل 4 أنا مشيت كام يونت؟ 3. فالفري دي جت إزاي؟ الفري دي جت by، يعني أنا عندي الفري دي أهي اللي هي the number of units between 1 and 4. How did I actually calculate the 3? I calculated the 3 by 4 minus 1. Now, since A مثلا is the starting point فهنسميها x1. Since B is the ending point فهنسميها x2. So where did the 3 come from? The 3 came from x2 minus x1. Now let's do the same thing for the vertical motion. اهو ده نيجي عند B وارسم vertical line بالشكل ده واجي احط 2 points هنا كده. And I ask you the same question. How many units between the 7 and the 2? Now the vertical motion between the 2 and the 7 is 5. Okay. How did we actually calculate the 5? We calculated the 5 by 7 minus 2. Type, if I want to use algebra, the 7 is the ending motion, which is y2, and the 2 is the starting position, which is y1. So L5 جبناها by subtracting y2 and y1, where 3 was calculated by subtracting x2 and x1. Now, actually, by looking at this triangle, we all notice, of course, that the angle intersecting the orange and the blue is a 90 degrees. And why is it a 90 degrees 100%? Because horizontal motion and vertical motion, they always intersect at 90. X and Y always intersect at 90. This is a 90 degrees. So this is a right angle triangle, as you can see, okay? And they're in the right angle triangle. The line opposite to the right angle is the hypotenuse. And of course, you do remember that to calculate the hypotenuse, you square the numbers, you add the numbers, and then you root. Square them, add them, and root them. طيب, يعني do I do the same thing here to conclude the rule together? Yes. So the distance rule is actually an application of Pythagoras theorem. It's an application of Pythagoras theorem. How did we calculate the 3? x2 minus x1. How did we calculate the 5? y2 minus y1. Why did I square them and root them and add them? Because this line over here is the hypotenuse in the right angle triangle. So this is the length and this is the distance rule. And we use this rule when I have 2 order pairs and when I am required to find the length of the line or the distance between 2 points. Now let's go back to the notes and write the rule over here. The last rule of the day, which is the length rule, the distance rule. Now these rules that we discussed today, علشان في ولاد بيقولوا لي طب مس احنا لازم نحفظ الرولز دي. Actually these, yes, you have to memorize them because they are not written in the formula sheet in your final exams, but you have to. So this is the last rule of the day, which is the distance rule or the length rule. And how do I use it. زي ما اتفقنا يا جماعة، احنا مش محتاجين ان احنا يبقى عندي رسمة. يعني انا المسائل مش هتبقى، ممكن تبقى مرسومة وممكن ما تبقاش مرسومة. Okay, now if I am given two order pairs like these very clearly and the question says find the length, all you need to do is label them x1, y1, x2, y2, and then substitute in the rule. Okay, and please put brackets يا جماعة to avoid any silly mistakes, especially when you're dealing with negative numbers. So x2 minus x1, y2 minus y1, and then I will place it as it is on the calculator من غير أي creativity أو أي إبداع. أهو 2 minus 1 minus 1 power 2 plus 7 minus 3 power 2. And then this is the answer that I got on the calculator, which is root 17. Now, this answer, now there is a video called surds. Now, this answer is called a surd. Okay. Now, when do I leave the answer as a surd, or when do I leave it like this? I mean, don't change it to decimal. You leave the answer like this if the question says, find an exact value of the length, find an exact value of the length, or if the question says keep your answer as a surd. يعني ده أو ده ماشي. طيب, when do I change to decimal? I change to decimal if the question says give your answer to 3 significant figures. So if the question says give your answer to 3 significant figures, then I change it to decimal and I round. Type, what if the question did not say? If the question did not say, it's totally up to you. You leave it as a surd, you leave it in decimal form. It is up to you. Now let's do the second example. Okay, عشان بس عايزة أقول لكم حاجة بالنسبة للرولز دي. لو المسألة جاية لي مثلا مرسومة، يعني زي ما انتم شايفين. Now these sort of questions يا ولاد اللي هي فيها أرقام كده, these sort of questions that are given in numbers, these questions are called the theoretical questions. Theoretical question is a question in which, as you can see, the question is never given as numbers, مش رسمة, not a graphical representation. Now, what if I'm given a graphical representation? This is what I'm going to do next, but let's just first do this again one last time. If I am dealing with negative numbers, what is the case? Okay, nothing at all. It's the same. Now, this is x1, this is y1, this is x2, and this is y2. Again, the same question. Can I change them? يعني can I swap that this would be x2 and y2 and this would be x1 and y1? Of course, you can do that. Again, it doesn't matter which point is point 1 and which point is point 2. بس أنا دايما برتاح نفسيا كده إنه خلاص يعني دي هنا كده x1 y1 ودي كده هنا إيه x2 and y2. It's just يعني راحة نفسية. It's just I feel more comfortable just labeling it this way. You know, this is the first as point 1 والثانية as point 2. And then I substitute in the rule immediately. 2 brackets squared and added x2 minus x1. Now be aware that x1 by itself is a negative value. So it's okay to have 2 negatives ورا بعض كده. You don't have to put the brackets, by the way. And then y2 minus y1. Okay, so x2. Okay, let me do it again because I really care about the questions that deal with negative numbers. أهو. تمام? So x2 minus x1. y2 minus y1. You put the numbers, you fill in the blanks, whether they are positive or negative, you don't panic. So x2 is 2. x1 is negative 16. So I have 2 negatives هم ورا بعض. مش أي مشكلة. Okay? y2 is negative 4. And then y1 is 5. And then زي ما هي كده on the calculator, please place it as it is on the calculator without any changes, please. يعني in this bracket, I have 2 negative signs, so you have to put them plus negative 4 minus 5 power 2. On the calculator, again, I'm going to say this again. When do I leave the answer like this? I leave it like this. If the question says, keep your answer as a surd, or if the question says, keep your answer as an exact value, when do I change to decimal? I change to decimal if the question says, change to 3 significant figures. After rounding to 3 significant figures, it is 20.1. Now let me just check again. خليني شك كده. خليني أتأكد تاني. x2 minus x1 plus y2 minus y1 power 2. لا تمام صح مظبوط. Okay, so these are mainly the 3 rules of the day. All I want to say before I end this video إنه if the question is graphical يعني what if مثلا I was given the coordinate plane as follows and then I was given the line مثلا هو الراجل مديني مين الراجل الexaminer مثلا حاطط لي line كده اهو. Okay, so this is what we call a graphical question اهو. A graphical question. What if I was given a diagram, a coordinate plane as follows, and then a line drawn, and the question says, find the gradient, or find the midpoint, or find the length of the line. Now, what do I do in this case? In this case, all you need to do is pick any 2 points on the line. يعني مثلا for example pick any 2 order pairs on the line. يعني مثلا دي ودي. لازم دول يعني؟ لا. أي حاجة. Okay? المهم what is important is that when you pick your points you just make sure that they have nice numbers. يعني مثلا ما اجيبش مثلا order pair 3.4 حاجة زي كده. So what I do is that I pick any 2 points on the line. Just make sure that these order pairs have nice numbers that you can deal with, and then you just substitute in the rules وخلاص. Any 2 points on the line. طبعا and then you just يعني you use the rules وما فيش أي مشكلة ولا أي حاجة. تمام؟ قبل ما أقفل الفيديو ده طبعا الحاجات دي هنبقى نعمل فيها واحنا بنحل مثلا في كلاسيفايد او كذا، بس هي زي ما قلت لكم لو انا عندي الرسمه مرسومه كده اختار اي 2 points on the line، ما اروحش اختار واحده هنا مثلا. طب دي مالها باللاين؟ As we said, you have to pick any 2 points on the line, write the order pairs and substitute in the rules. The last thing that I'm going to say before I end this video is the difference between the y-intercept and the x-intercept, and I'm going to say this again in the coming video because this is very important. If I have a line drawn randomly as follows. Now, what is the x-intercept, since we're dealing with coordinate geometry now, and what is the y-intercept? The x-intercept and the y-intercept are the points in which the line crosses any of the coordinate axes. The line crosses any of the coordinate axes. يعني اللاين معدي على الواي axis. معدي على الواي axis دي اسمها y-intercept. Now, since this line is on the y-axis, so the x coordinate is equal to 0, and then the y is whatever. So this has a value. This is the y-intercept. The line crosses the y-axis. And what is the x-intercept? The x-intercept is the point in which the line crosses the x-axis. يبقى y-intercept, the line crosses the y-axis, and the y-intercept is an order pair with an x-coordinate always equals to 0, and a y-coordinate equals to whatever. The x-intercept is the point in which the line crosses the x-axis. Since it is on the x-axis, so definitely the y-coordinate is equal to 0, and the x-coordinate is equal to whatever. So the order pair of any x-intercept has a y-coordinate always and forever equals to 0, and an x-coordinate equals to whatever. Please be aware of the x-intercept and the y-intercept. They are very important, and We will discuss them later on, طبعا, when we're dealing with equations of lines. Thank you. And I hope that this video was useful to you. So this is coordinate geometry part 1, and then I'll see you in part 2 and in part 3. الله أعلم بقى ممكن يكون في part 4. Thank you. Bye.